Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner Casey Weade. Casey is the president of Howard Bailey Financial.
Whatever risk you face during your retirement years, we've got a plan.
A published author and radio host.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
His advocacy for retirees and pre-retirees has made him a sought-after speaker and trusted financial leader.
And putting a real plan together.
This is the Purpose-Based Retirement.
Good to see you again. I am Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. He is also the author of his new book, The 2016 Guide to the Purpose-Based Retirement. We're going to base the program on some of what you'll learn reading this book today. And then Marshall Johnson from Howard Bailey Financial, vice president there, will be joining us a little bit later, talking about some of those vampire-like fees and expenses that can really hurt your income in retirement, some things you need to learn about and how to spot those things and make sure they don't affect you. So I want to jump into the book, Casey, and kind of brief me on exactly what's the premise behind this updated version of the Purpose-Based Retirement.
Sure. Well, the thing is, it's not entirely really an updated version of the Purpose-Based Retirement. It's really an add-on to the original book. That original book, I think for you to understand, if you're not familiar with it, was the Purpose-Based Retirement. It was really created to help guide you and kind of help you create a foundation for your retirement. Whether you're at, near, in retirement, it can act as that initial stepping stone to help you do two things. One is find purpose in your retirement, and those are the happiest people that I find that I meet that are in retirement are the ones that have helped themselves create purpose and meaning to their daily lives. And then secondly, help to support that true meaning of your retirement, which you've worked your whole lives for, which is not money. It's not about money during retirement. However, you're sitting there watching this show right now, so it tells me maybe there's something going on that you have a question or concern about. And with the purpose-based retirement, you've isolated that purpose for your retirement, and then you can isolate the purpose of those individual dollars you've saved for retirement. Maybe you're concerned over inflation, the stock market. Maybe you're concerned about long-term care and health care risks and the cost of those things over time, rising taxes. All those things have to be encountered. Taking that retirement portfolio that you created over the years and isolating each one of your risks, that book will help create a foundation for that. Wow, the 2016 Guide to Retirement Efficiency, this is going to help you start to realize some of those little cracks that you might have in your portfolio where you can start filling those cracks in and unleashing the efficiency of that portfolio. So there's a lot of quick tips, tricks in there that probably your financial planner, your CPA is not sharing with you, and things that I know if you pick up this book, you read through it, you're going to find at least one or two things that will have an impact on your life and definitely overcome the price of the book in tens of thousands over the years, I'm sure.
And what is it that's going on in the market right now or the economy or what's happening with retirements that made you think now is the time for this information?
Right. Well, it's been several years since I unleashed the Purpose-Based Retirement on retirees. And so I said, what I'm seeing with a lot of the individuals that I'm meeting with and a lot of the individuals I talk to that are nearing retirement or in retirement, even those that are in the accumulation stage, still trying to get to retirement, have become a little complacent. We've been in one of the longest bull runs in history. This is now the second longest bull run in history as right next to, as of April of 2016, we've entered the second longest bull run in history, just second to that of the 40s and 50s. And so now we're looking at something that's approaching what looked like back in the 80s and 90s, a bull run that took us to epic proportions and valuations that led to a 40% downturn in the market and a 15-year bear market. Now we've been in this bull market for 7 years. The market's up over 180%, probably close to 200%. And that's something that really concerns me because a lot of individuals are now becoming complacent. Maybe you forgot about 2008. You forgot about the losses you had during the time period. And now you're back to even. It took people 4 or 5 years to get back to even after a lot of the losses they experienced in 2008. And now we kind of just go, oh, well, maybe that'll never happen again. That was just a fluke. Well, it's time for it to happen again. It will happen again sometime during your retirement years, whether that's next year or 5 years from now. So I think you need to be prepared. And this is something that you can pull out and say, well, maybe I'll just take one piece and implement that into my financial life. And that's what this can help you with.
And if you're just joining us, on the screen right now is Casey's new book available for pre-order. We'll give you the details on that just a little bit later on. So what do you think is the biggest impact that you would like to see this have on retirees?
Well, I think overall, if we talk in twofold, one, it's just going to get the engine started, right? You're starting to think about retirement and you're trying to figure out how you can possibly tweak some things here and there that might have an impact. Well, this can start to get that thought process started. I do recommend you read The Purpose-Based Retirement and before you read the guide to the Purpose-Based Retirement, but it can start to get that engine started, maybe you have specific questions and you have specific questions about your retirement. You're not thinking about the big picture yet. You have stock in your 401k. Maybe you have a tax issue when it comes to required minimum distributions. You're trying to avoid paying taxes on your Social Security. You're not sure which Social Security strategy to use. You've got a pension decision to make. It gets to those finer details that can help you understand why you're hearing the certain recommendations you're hearing, and hopefully allows you to start to make some decisions on your own, provided that you now have the education you need in order to make those decisions, feel empowered to make those decisions, and have the peace of mind you deserve during your retirement years.
So who really needs to be reading this book? You mentioned people heading toward retirement or maybe helping mom and dad with retirement. Who's your real audience?
Well, I think the beauty of this is that it can really help anyone, whether they're in or near retirement or not. It can help anyone at least start to get the thought process started. I think a lot of the really good stuff in there is going to come down to taxes. That your CPAs may be preparing your tax return, but they're not doing any real tax planning. Your investment advisor or brokers helping to get you invested in the market and get to growing, but you're not actually seeing any financial planning being done, and this can act as a supplement for that. I think, for me personally, my wife is somebody that wasn't really all that interested in finance. And I was talking to her on the way over to the studio about how she was confused over this whole 401k thing. And I said, well, why don't you pick up the book and flip to this page, this chapter, and read a little bit about 401ks and how they work. And it's a really easy thing to do is say, well, why don't you just read this chapter? We've all got those people in our lives which we know need some help with their finances, need to start getting on the right track. This can be an easy segue into getting the spark going.
Well, I mentioned just a moment ago that the book is not quite published yet. It's available for pre-order, but listen, you don't have to wait to sit down with somebody from Howard Bailey Financial and get started down your purpose-based retirement road. For the next 10 people who call right now, it's an opportunity for a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's an opportunity to get an education about your money so that you can make really the best decisions for yourself and your particular situation as you move forward. So for the next 10 callers at 482-9559, Casey and the team will make time on the calendar to visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. Again, that number is 260-482-9559. We always hit you with a question of the day, and today's question is, which investment carries the biggest risk? Is it real estate investment trusts, dividend stocks, fixed annuities, government bonds? Well, Casey has the answer for you when we come back.
Hi, I'm a certified financial planner professional. I believe the bar for entry into the financial industry is far too low. You and your hard-earned money deserve better. With a CFP professional, you can have the confidence you are working with an advisor who has met not only rigorous education and experience requirements, but also is held to the highest ethical and professional standards in the industry, resulting in better methods that will address the financial challenges you will face in retirement. If you'd like to see how a CFP professional can serve you, give us a call.
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
And welcome back to the Purpose-Based Retirement. So, do you know which investment carries with it the biggest risk? It's in Chapter 11 of Casey's new book. We gave you the choices of real estate investment trusts, dividend stocks, fixed annuities, or government bonds? Casey, which one's correct?
Well, you may be surprised to find out the answer to that question is actually A, real estate investment trusts. Now, dividend stocks carry risk, bonds carry risk. Real estate investment trusts are the highest on that risk scale. And so often, they're often sold as someone walking into maybe your broker or your banker's office, and you said, hey, I'm really concerned about the stock market, I want to get out. And so they said, hey, here's an uncorrelated asset class. It's creating a 7-8% annual dividend yield, and you can have a really good rate of return without having to worry about the stock market's volatility. Well, that may be true that you can potentially get a high dividend yield, but with great risk comes great reward, and with that great reward comes great risk. You have to understand that, because that same investment you made in that real estate investment trust could lose its value in totality. You could end up with nothing at the end of your retirement that you invested into that real estate investment trust, but it may still be a good answer for a portion of the portfolio. I created this spectrum of risk of different types of investments so that you could kind of see where those things lie. We start at the very top with private equity and options. You'll notice that real estate investment trusts, or REITs and MLPs, land in the top echelon of risk, the highest risk investments, right next to commodities. As we go down that risk, we see international equity, growth equity, international bonds. High yield bonds is right there in the middle. And this is something that I'm seeing more and more of today as investment advisors are reaching for yield in this super low interest rate environment we're in today. I'm seeing a lot of portfolios that are coming into our office. We're auditing them and finding out that the 60-40 mix, maybe it's a 40% bond allocation, and of that 40% in bonds, it's all in junk bonds, also known as high yield bonds. Then there's variable annuities. Variable annuities came on the scene in the late 90s and became widely popular by the early 2000s after 9/11 and the tech bubble burst. Why? Because people were looking for the silver bullet. Keep in mind, your money is still at risk in that variable annuity. My idea here is that you need to understand that all of these can be valuable financial tools, but you have to understand the amount of risk that you're going to have in each one of those tools so that you can have a balanced foundation and good growth potential to play a little defense in the future. What about sequence of returns risk? In Chapter 11, we talk about the second biggest risk to your retirement income strategy, sequence of returns. You often hear, maybe from your financial advisor, you only need to make 5-6% a year, maybe 7% a year in order to have the retirement lifestyle that you need, and your money will last the rest of your life. But what if that 5-6% average rate of return all of a sudden has 1 year where it loses 30 or 40% in value, and you still need to draw that income or put that income strategy on hold? Just like this gentleman here, where there's a 4-foot average depth, he's got one place where he could potentially drown. Don't let that be your retirement portfolio. Take a look at this from 1989 to 2009. From 1989 to 2008, we saw 20 years where the market averaged 8.5% a year. If we take that same 1989 to 2008 sequence and we reverse it, we'll see the same average rate of return, right? Although we start with a bad decade rather than ending with a bad decade. Now, let's take $1 million retirement portfolio and draw $50,000 out of that portfolio every year, or 5% a year. $50,000 a year, it's about 5% of a portfolio that's going through an 8.5% average rate of return environment. Let's take it and say that we retired in '89. We drew $50,000 a year out of that $1 million. By the end of 2008, we get 20 years out, and you've now got $3.1 million, that blue line right there on your screen. Now, when it comes to the green line, we have the same exact 8.5% annual rate of return, but over that 20-year period, that $1 million is now turning into $235,000. If they continue to draw at that same $50,000 a year for the next 3, 4, 5 years, that $235,000 could go to zero very quickly. And I think another thing to point out here is that this is at the tail end of a pretty good market, a bull market, and we have 235,000. So what's typically next? A bear market, which leads to running out of money during retirement. This is why we always say you have to protect that first leg of your income strategy. So if you're just looking at your portfolio and saying, I just draw a little bit out each year, I don't know what my safe money is, what my paychecks are, what my paychecks are, what's going to take care of healthcare and emergencies, then you don't have a purpose-based retirement. Next up, we're going to talk about reverse dollar cost averaging. Now, when it comes to dollar cost averaging, you're probably familiar with this. If you've got a 401k and you take a little bit out of every paycheck and put it into that 401k, you're dollar cost averaging into the market, which is reducing your overall cost for getting in the market. When the market's low, you buy less of the market. Or you buy more of the market when the market's low, and you buy less of the market when the market's high. As you can see from this chart, we have someone that's investing $1,000 a year, and the share price is fluctuating from $6, $5 to $10, and you can see the number of shares they're buying. Look at June. During June, they invest $1,000 at $5 a share, and they buy 200 shares. When they invest in January, $1,000 at $10 a share, they buy 100 shares. Over that 12-month time frame, they've invested $12,000, and even though the share price ends lower than it began with, they actually have a gain of around 10% for the entire year. Now instead, let's say that we started withdrawing $1,000 a month for that 12-month period. The graph on the right has a $400,000 amount that was originally invested, or $300,000 amount originally invested, drawing 4% a year is $12,000 a year. Over that period of time, there was a 30% loss, and instead of actually experiencing a gain as we did when we were dollar cost averaging in, there's over a 30% loss when we're taking that income out of that portfolio. This is why you have to make sure you have some safe money for those bad times, or where are you going to take that distribution from when the market's down? A lot of people not paying attention to this during 2008 either had to stop drawing their income, change their lifestyle, or go back to work. Don't let that happen to you. Then we have the 4% withdrawal rule. The 4% withdrawal rule was a widely used rate of withdrawal from your investment portfolio that individuals used to judge how much they could take for retirement withdrawals over a 30-year time frame. And this was widely accepted and utilized during the 80s and 90s. A 4% withdrawal was considered a safe withdrawal rate. Think about the different type of environment we're in today. A slower moving economy, as well as more than anything else, a slower rate of return on the bond portion of our portfolio. Now it's being illustrated that a safe withdrawal rate for a 60% stock portfolio over 30 years is 1.7%. That highlighted region on your screen, and it still has a 5% failure rate. A 3% rate of withdrawal still has a 50% chance of failure. And over a 40-year time horizon, that's 1.26% as a safe withdrawal rate. If that's the case, I'm just going to take my life savings and stick it into a fixed account, paying me 2, 3, 4% a year, and enjoy my retirement just the way I plan to, and know exactly when I'm going to run out of money instead of wondering when I'm going to run out. This is what requires you to start planning for retirement, and planning in ways that your grandparents probably didn't have to. Back to you, Lee.
So if your investment advisor is still talking to you about that 4% withdrawal rate, or maybe you've never even heard of this sequence of returns risk, well, that's a good reason for you to be one of the next 10 people to call right now and have a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's an opportunity so you can learn more about your money and about your future, because we want you to make the best decisions possible for yourself moving forward. So for the next 10 people dialing 482-9559, Casey and the Howard Bailey team will make time on the calendar to sit down and visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. The number to call, 482-9559. We hope you'll dial right now.
Hi, I'm a certified financial planner practitioner. There is no silver bullet for your retirement, but that is what financial advisors are selling you every day. The fact is that in the constantly changing world we're in today, it's more complex than ever. But if you can establish a clear plan of action with well-defined goals, you've taken the first step. At Howard Bailey Financial, our goal is to lend you the confidence you are on the path towards the financial independence you deserve. If you'd like help designing your personalized retirement strategy, give us a call today.
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
Welcome back to the Purpose-Based Retirement. Casey's been joined by Marshall Johnson, Vice President at Howard Bailey Financial, to talk with you about the risk of hidden fees and expenses. Guys?
Thanks, Lee. That's right. We have Marshall Johnson here with me today, a good friend and longtime employee here at Howard Bailey Financial and a certified financial planner practitioner as well. Marshall, thanks for joining us here today.
Hey, glad to be here, Casey.
Hey, you know, the reason I wanted to have Marshall on for this portion of the show is because we're talking about hidden fees and expenses. And we're talking about one of the chapters that came directly out of the 2016 guide to your retirement efficiency. And I utilized that chapter to help you understand where you might be able to find those fees and expenses and uncover them for yourself. Now, I went through this when it came back to Marshall. And when I first met Marshall, Marshall had been in the mutual fund industry for about 7 years. He was using managed mutual funds and actively managing those managed mutual funds for a management fee. And he was doing so to help people generate a consistent retirement income, as well as keep up with inflation. It was their emergency fund. It was for healthcare. It was supposed to accomplish all these different goals with one financial vehicle. I was able to show Marshall how he could more efficiently position those client assets, and most of all, when it comes to this chapter, show Marshall how he could cut his clients' fees and expenses in half, right?
Yeah, Casey, it's about an evolution, and we talk about, you know, the tools and things that are available today. You talked about some of the challenges for investors today, but a lot has changed that's improved some of these tools and improved transparency. So now we can actually dig in and we can understand our cost, and not to throw mutual funds under the bus, but it's an area where we just didn't understand the cost associated with them, and as times have changed, we have to understand where those fees come from.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with paying a fee or an expense to get a piece of the market, to start growing, to have financial planning advice. You just want to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck and you're getting real value, right? And I think that's the point here, is that you understand those things. You wouldn't go out and you wouldn't buy a car without knowing how much the car costs. You wouldn't go out and buy a car without looking on the internet and seeing what other cars are going for. You always want to know that you're getting a good deal when you're making big purchases. Here we're talking about your life savings. So that's why I think it's so important. But Marshall, when it comes to these things, why do you think it's so important for people to understand?
You know, Casey, I'll share a quick story. I sat down with a family just the other day. They had a portfolio of $450,000 spread across 18 different mutual funds. When we figured out the cost, he said to me, Marshall, I don't feel like I'm gaining anything over the last 5 years. We dug in and found that they had annual expenses of over 3.3%. And on that size portfolio, that's over $14,000 a year, Casey. We can trim those fees in half, saving them over $7,000 a year. Why is it important? $7,000 a year over 10 years, that's $70,000 without even compounding. So I think it's very important to understand your cost, because your bottom line is profitability, right?
Sure.
If I have cost of 3%, I need to hurdle 3% in returns just to be profitable. So if I'm shooting for 5%, now I actually need 8. So it's being in the know and knowing how much you're paying, because that could be a lot of money.
Especially if you have a management fee on top of your mutual fund cost.
Yeah,
so,
and that's it too. You know, you talk about actively managed mutual funds. If we have somebody actively managing those actively
sounds
managed
like
mutual
redundancy.
funds, there's a lot of fees going, fees on top of fees, right?
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Now, where do you find, we talked about mutual funds, so that must be one of the places that we find the most often, find the most abundant fees and expenses. What other places do you find those the best?
You know, we've talked about this on the show a little bit, but one other area that we see a lot of fees is variable annuities. And the thing you need to remember about variable annuities is they hold mutual funds inside of an insurance wrapper. We start looking into some of the costs. We talk about mortality and expense cost. Every variable annuity has one. Typically, it's at well in excess of 1%. A lot of times we have riders or extra benefits. It may add an additional 80, another 1% on top of it. Now we have to add in the mutual fund cost, Casey. So real soon we start to eclipse 3%, if not getting closer to 4. We've seen them upwards of 5, nearly 6%. That's a tremendous fee, and that's part of my frustration, is seeing families that have tremendous costs that they weren't even aware of, because these statements don't smack you in the face and say, hey, you're paying us $14,000 a year. we have to dig in, we have to uncover, we have to use the tools available to us today and sit down with somebody that can help us uncover those fees.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and what we're talking about here, we started with mutual funds, that bled right into variable annuities with mutual funds inside of them, right? So it sounds like a lot of the places we're finding those fees and expenses, and a lot of places you'll find them. If you open up your portfolio and you see a bunch of different mutual funds, then you've got costs and expense in there. And many times, I had a gentleman the other day that said, Casey, I don't know why I would pay an advisory fee. I've got money in my 401k. I don't really want to pay a fee. I'm already invested. Well, what we were able to uncover was inside of that 401k, he had almost 2.2% per year in annual fees and expenses. We could dramatically lower those fees and expenses and provide valuable financial planning advice, allowing him to really generate a plan of action that gave him the peace of mind to know not only where he was today, but where he's headed at the same time. And I think everyone deserves to have that opportunity.
Yeah, you need to know, and we're seeing costs come down across the board, but that still doesn't mean you can't trim some of that fat.
And we talk about fees and expenses, right? Yeah. So we're talking about fees and expenses and the problems there, but there's other costs to owning mutual funds. There's other costs to owning your investments. Right. Let's talk a little bit about the tax cost.
Yeah, this is an area where a lot of people say, well, I got a 1099 this year, right? Why do I have to pay taxes on money that I didn't withdraw from my mutual fund? And that's one of the areas inside of mutual funds. If we hold them in after-tax accounts or non-qualified accounts, you're getting that 1099 every year because inside of that mutual fund, they are buying and selling and they're creating taxable events. So what we find is a very tax inefficient vehicle, especially for those after-tax dollars.
Yeah, well, I had somebody that I met with that wanted me to audit their portfolio from last year after they filed their taxes, and they had about $300,000 in this mutual fund portfolio. He said, last year I lost about 2.5% of my investment. The market was pretty flat for the year. I don't know how I lost any money, and what we found was part of the reason he lost value is because of the fees that were in excess of 2.5% on an annual basis. But he also wanted to know more than anything else is how did I lose money and pay taxes on my money after I lost it. He had $300,000, like I said, lost value and had a $10,000 distribution, a capital gains distribution that showed up on his tax return. We can eliminate that by eliminating the mutual funds and unleashing true tax efficiency by owning EFTs, exchange traded funds, ETFs,
lower cost,
as well as individual stocks and individual bonds. You can grow up at some point. You don't have to be in that retail mutual fund world. When you've accumulated a portfolio of $200,000-$300,000, now you can graduate to a place where you have total transparency and true control over your life savings and your future. That's what you deserve. Thanks for joining us here, Marshall.
My pleasure.
I hope to see you right back here real soon.
Sounds good.
Casey, thank you. Marshall, good to see you again. And today we're going to close the program with an offer I hope you'll take from us. For the next 10 people who call right now, we're going to offer a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's that opportunity to get an education about your money so you can make sure that you aren't paying those hidden fees and expenses and you are making the best decisions for yourself moving forward. So for the next 10 callers at 482-9559, know that Casey and the team will be willing to make time on the calendar, sit down and visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. 482-9559. And if you'd like to have a general second opinion or just have a financial question, you can always contact the certified financial planners at Howard Bailey Financial at info@howardbailey.com or just visit them online at howardbailey.com. And you can pre-order a copy of Casey's book, The Purpose-Based Retirement, anytime.